Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of I Need Friends, a podcast about whatever. I'm Kelly. Thanks for being my friend today and listening to me blab on about whatever. Today, you can see I'm dressed up very fancy because we're getting into some opera, and you got to get dressed up for the opera. So I figure, even though I'm just talking about it, I got to bring you the whole vibe. If you haven't been to an opera, you should go. A lot of them are boring, but some of them are really fun. And some of them that are boring, they're still really good. You just have to you got to know what you're getting into and be prepared. They're not fast paced at all, but it's really nice. You get dressed up, you get all pretty. A lot of places you can have drinks before you go in. You can manage to sneak in like a split of champagne during the winter months, just right under your jacket, and then you can drink while you're watching the opera, and that makes it even better. So the Marriage of Figaro is one of the best operas, I think, ever, and probably one of the most well-known. And as soon as I say that, you're probably thinking Figaro, like Figaro, 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 Figaro. No, it is that Figaro, but it's not that opera. The Marriage of Figaro is actually a sequel to The Barber of Seville, in which Figaro is helping Count Almaviva court Rosina, the countess, and he's a barber, and he's just very bubbly and outgoing and charming and clever. And so his aria, Figaro's aria, I think it's called Largo al Factotum, is in The Barber of Seville. And that's where he's like, Figaro. He's talking about he's a barber. He's like, I'm sure everyone here has been looking for a good quality barber, and here I am. And he's just talking about how everyone's calling his name over here. Figaro la, Figaro qua, Figaro su, Figaro ju. And it's just, it's good. And that's the one that's like, it's really fun to sing if you know it. That one it slaps. Honestly, you can get down to that one. It's like abrava Figaro, abrava Figaro, abrava ate fortuna, na me cara, la 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 la, ate fortuna, na me cara. So I won't keep singing that. But yeah, that song is not it's not in the Marriage of Figaro, although you would recognize the overture. Everyone knows the overture from the Marriage of Figaro, even if they don't know that that's what it's from. And I even tried learning it on my flute because I wanted to do it as the intro to this episode. But I couldn't. I'm not very good. I used to be pretty good at the flute when I played in high school more than 10 years ago. But and no, I know what you're thinking. I didn't put it anywhere. Okay, that would be scary. Look at this. Look at that. No, that's not going there. Anyway, I tried learning this overture, and it didn't go so well. See, there we go. Can't do that, but that's how it goes. I can play that part. You recognize that, right? That overture. It's in like a bunch of like Christmas movies and stuff. That's enough of that though. We'll put the flute away. We'll put the singing away. Maybe I might break it back out later, but I think even if I was still practicing on the flute, I don't think I'd be able to do that either way, because look at this. Look at the beginning of that. That's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 bars. 5 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all in 5 bars. The beginning of that. That's too much. I think it's usually just played on strings anyway, although throughout the song there's more stuff like that that the flute does actually play, and I couldn't do it. I even had to look up like fingering charts because I couldn't even remember how to finger all the notes. So I did also try plucking it out one-handed on the piano. that didn't work. So, all right, let's put that away. Let's talk about the Marriage of Figaro, because this is such a funny, fun, raunchy opera, and there's a lot to it. So like I said, it's the sequel to Barbara of Seville, or Seville, however you say it. Seville is, it's French. So that was originally a play written by, oh, let's see if I can remember this guy's name. Pierre-Augustin Caron de Beaumarchais. And this guy's incredible. You should look him up. Because he was just one of those guys that was like, could fit in anywhere, get along with anyone, was like kind of up to no good, but for the purpose of good. Like, he was a spy, financier. He, I don't know what word I just said there. He dabbled in law for a little bit. He worked for like the kings. Like, he wrote a letter against the king. You know how they used to do pamphlets and everything in those days? Well, he sent like a pamphlet out against the king, and then got hired by the king for substantial amounts of money to find out who it was that wrote the letter. So he was just always, he was doing stuff like that. And he was one of those people that, like, you know, was always trying to get one up on the aristocrats, but you know, could also really get along with them and fit in, and benefited from them quite a bit. So the character of Figaro is kind of reflective of Beaumarchais. That's such a fun name to say, by the way. So then the opera, the version, The Marriage of Figaro, that was actually done by Lorenzo da Ponte, I think was his name. And then of course Mozart is the one that composed it, and it's just amazing. You can find tons of productions of this on YouTube. There's a bunch of different kinds. The one that I like to watch is in Glyndebourne from 1994, but the conductor in that is just amazing. Once he starts that overture, it's incredible. I tried watching another one because, like I said, The Marriage of Figaro is really raunchy, and this production wasn't very raunchy. There was much less groping than I was accustomed to, so I wanted to find another one with more groping. And it just wasn't, as soon as the overture started, it just wasn't as good. It's like, it really needs to like have all those punches and be really powerful, and this one does it. So if you can find that one, watch that one. But anyway, okay, so The Marriage of Figaro, you can kind of figure out what it's about. Figaro is getting married, but he keeps running into all these speed bumps and things along the way that's keeping him from getting married. And all 4 acts are occurring within one day. And it starts off where Susanna and Figaro are in their new room that the Count has given them. And Figaro is measuring a bed, or measuring to make sure that they have room for a bed. And he's very focused on making sure they can get a bed in this room because they're about to get married. So I'm sure you can figure out what Figaro is most excited about. So Susanna is trying on her veil because she's getting ready for the wedding. And she's all like, oh, look at me. Look, I'm so pretty in my veil. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're gorgeous. Let me make sure I can bang you over here. And he's talking about how generous Count Almaviva, because now they're both working for the Count. Figaro kind of works directly for the Count, and Susanna is the Countess's chambermaid. So Figaro's talking about how generous the Count is for giving them a room that's so close to them. It'll be easy for them to come whenever they need anything. And Susanna's like, you're dumb. And Figaro's, what? Why are you being mean to me? Why am I dumb? And she's like, the Count has been trying to get all up in this. That's why he put us in this room, so that he can, you know. And Figaro's like, hold up a second. Are you for real? This motherfucker, Almaviva, is doing this? And Susanna's like, yeah, how did you not pick up on that? And he's like, all right, well, if he wants to dance, let's dance. I'll pluck a little guitar. And of course, they're singing everything that they're saying. And this one is in Italian. And it's just so beautiful because the Italian arias are just the best. And the Italian language is just gorgeous and romantic. And it sounds really good when it's being sung. And so Figaro leaves because he's going to go scheme on how he's going to keep the Count from trying to bang his wife. And he has an idea. And Susanna is just kind of continuing to go about her business. And then you get these characters, Marcelina and Dr. Bartilow, who I think were also in Barbara of Seville. I haven't fully watched that one yet, so I still have to figure that one out. But Marcelina comes in and she's talking to Dr. Bartilow about how she's going to try to marry Figaro. Well, how is she going to marry Figaro? He's getting ready to marry Susanna. Like, what's happening here? Figaro owes her money. And in the contract for the loan, if he can't pay her back, he has to marry her. And she's a much older woman. She's supposed to not really be as desirable or attractive. She gets called like an old hag and stuff. So that's who Marcelina is. And Dr. Bartilow, he doesn't like Figaro because of his scheming ways. And he's like, sure, he wants to get one up on Figaro. So he's ready to help Marcelina. Well, Susanna comes back into the room and Marcelina's there. And so she doesn't like Susanna. And I guess Susanna doesn't like Marcelina. And so they're sarcastically complimenting each other by being like, oh, no, you leave the room first because you're so beautiful. Oh, the Count just loves you so much. And Susanna's like, oh, the whole country loves you, slut. And then she's like, oh, I could never be as beautiful as you. I could never dress as well as you. And she's like, I could never be as smart and modest as you. And then finally Susanna goes, well, you'll always be older than me. Your age is so much greater than mine. And that just pisses Marcelina off. And they go back and forth for a while, kind of like repeating some stuff. Like that's what happens in opera. It's like you first kind of figure out what's going on, and then you enjoy the music and you enjoy the song because they're going to repeat some of these things over and over and over. And sometimes they'll go through like a whole little sequence where they're having like part of a conversation or a little back and forth, and then they'll go back and they'll repeat that whole section again. And if you've never been to an opera, if they're singing in a different language, they actually, even if they're singing in English, because sometimes it's hard to understand opera, they have a translation going on top above the stage. So you can find out everything that's going on. It's not like you have to know Italian or figure out. They have like subtitles for for operas. So Susanna gets the better of Marcelina in that exchange, and then she leaves. And then as she's leaving, Cherubino comes in. Cherubino, we're being introduced to yet another character. He's the page, so he's a young boy. And in these times, these roles were played by women because they needed to be sung in a higher voice, and the younger boys that could sing in a higher voice just weren't as good performers, so they would just have a woman do it instead. And there was something kind of like sexy and erotic about it at the time, having a woman being dressed up as a man. And it was also really funny. So it's just like, it was pretty like risque to do stuff like that. So Cherubino, he's the page. He is just so horny, like uncontrollably out of his mind, ready to pounce on anything that walks by. And so he's coming to Susanna for help because the Count has caught him with Barbarina, who is the gardener's daughter. And he's like, the Count's really mad at me. Can you talk to the Countess to intervene on my behalf and just kind of, put in a good word for me? And she's like, oh yeah, what about the Countess? Aren't you in love with the Countess? And she's got like a ribbon that was from her bonnet. He's like holding the ribbon. He's like, oh, this sweet, lovely ribbon, because he's like obsessed with the Countess. Of all the women that he loves, the Countess he loves the most. And then he goes into this song basically about how horny he is. And he's like, he's just kind of coming in to these feelings. It's supposed to be very new for him. And he's just talking about how he'll feel like icy one moment and hot the next. And just even the mention of love, he's so flustered and he's like moaning and groaning without realizing it. Just like, you picture like this little teenager just standing around all these girls just being like, oh, oops, sorry, did that happen out loud? So yeah, he has this long, it's a beautiful song, very difficult to sing. Um, just about how horny he is all the time. And so as she's talking to him, she's like, "Oh, Carabino, you've gone mad." The count starts to come in, and the page doesn't want to be found alone with a woman after he was just found with Barberina, because now the count is just going to think that he's trying to get with everyone and be really mad. So he hides behind a chair while the count comes in. And what's the count doing to see Susanna? Well, as we know, he's trying to bang her. So he's coming to her again. He's like, "I really want to do you." And she's like, "No, no grazie. I don't want to do you." And he's like, "Well, what if I give you money? I'll even pay you." And she's just like, "Really? Like, nah, that's good. No, thank you." And keep in mind the page is here and he's listening to everything. And then as the count is trying to make his moves on Susanna, Don Basilio starts to come in. So we get another character coming in. Don Basilio, by the way, most badass name ever. And he's just like some music teacher. So he comes in, and Don Basilio, he's a very small character, but you find out more about him as the play goes along. He's kind of sneaky. So he comes in, and now the count has to hide because he doesn't want to be found alone with Susanna because he's in there for a bad reason. But the only place he can hide is behind this chair where the page is hiding. So Susanna's like, "Oh no, don't hide behind there." And she's kind of blocking over there. And as she blocks from there, the count is coming around her to hide behind the chair. The page leaps out from behind the chair into the chairs. The count is crouching behind it, and Susanna covers him with a cloth just as Don Basilio comes in. So Don Basilio's all like, you know, the page, he's like, oh no, he starts off by talking about how the count really likes him and she should, like, try to get with the count. And she's like, no. And he's even saying things like, "Oh, but certainly a woman like you would want a wise and powerful man." And she's just like, "Really? Like, I'm good." And then Don Basilio is like, "What about the page? He needs to be careful because the way that he looks at the countess, he's going to be found out, and he's like in love with her." And this enrages the count. So he emerges from his hiding spot and he's like, "What is this I hear?" And he's getting all mad. And then Don Basilio's like, "Where did you come from?" Because he was just hiding behind this chair, and he just comes up like, "What did you say?" And so Don Basilio was like backtracking a little bit and kind of letting like the drama ensue. And he's like, "I hate the page because I caught the page with Barberina. I was coming to Barberina's room, which, why were you going to Barberina's room?" It's like, "And when I knocked, she was more flustered than usual. And so suspiciously, I looked around the room, and underneath the tablecloth, I lifted it up, and there was Carabino hiding under the tablecloth." And he is demonstrating this as he's telling the story. He's showing Don Basilio and Susanna what he did, and he's lifting up the cloth that's on the chair, and there's Carabino. Just as he says he found Carabino, he reveals Carabino in this space, and he's all like, "What the fuck?" And the page is like, "Look, I'm really sorry." And Don Basilio is loving the drama, but he doesn't want things to escalate too far and too quickly. Like, you see him over in the corner, like, better and better. So you're like, "Oh, you fucking did this on purpose." So he's like hiding out, like stalking around, like watching all these people like come in and out. Because he's trying to, the reason he brings up the page is because he's trying to say that Susanna, he knew that she was alone with him, and or knew that he was trying to come in here. And she's like, he's all like, "What's up with that? What are you trying to get with the page?" So he's just kind of stalking around, I think, like trying to like stir up some drama while like staying out of it at the same time, because I think that he knew that both the page and Carabino, the page, and Count Almaviva were in the room when he's telling this stuff. And so before the Count can get too angry with Carabino, you hear these people coming, and Don Basilio's like, yo, chill, like people are fucking coming. And then Figaro comes in, boom, with all these peasants, and they're here to honor the count. And what are they honoring him for? Well, he had abolished a law that said that the count, or whatever lord of a manor, castle, what have you, could sleep with his any of the brides in his castle on their wedding night, a little prima nocta thing going on. And he abolished that law when he first married the countess, because at the time he was so in love with her. All the while, he's been philandering behind her back constantly, apparently just all around the fucking castle. So, but as far as everyone else knows, he's not, and the law is abolished. So Figaro has gotten all of these peasants to come in and bring him flowers and praise him, be like, oh, such a good, lovely, admirable count, that you're not sleeping with people's wives on their wedding night. That's so amazing and gracious of you. Trying to just put it out there like, hey, we know that you're not supposed to do this, just reminding you. That's kind of Figaro's way. And then he tries to get the count to marry all of them in front of the townspeople, so that way they can just go ahead and get married, consummate the marriage. Technically, once Figaro and Susanna have done it, now the count can no longer do it at all, I guess is how it seems, but he's really trying to get in there before Figaro does, is what it seems like. So the count is like, I fucking know what you're doing. Whoa. Hey there. He's like, I fucking know what you're doing, Figaro, and you're not going to pull this shit on me. Like, I'm going to figure something out. So he goes, you know what? Yes, I would love to marry you guys, but let's wait, because we're going to have a big party. I'll throw a big party for you guys. And this is his way of trying to figure out how to scheme. And then Act 1 ends with the count telling the page, Cherubino, that he's going to be sent to be in the military. And Figaro starts kind of teasing him. He has like this long, fun little song where he's teasing the page about how he won't be able to chase after girls anymore, and there won't be any women. It'll just be fighting and fighting and fighting, and there's no women at all, and you won't have any fun. You'll just be fighting. And that ends Act 1, I think. And Act 2 opens with the Countess, and all of Act 2 happens in the Countess's bedroom somehow. And it starts with her alone in her room, and she's singing this very sad, gorgeous song. Gosh, what's going on with me right now? Singing this sad, gorgeous song, just kind of lamenting, that the Count doesn't seem to love her anymore. And Susanna comes in, and they're talking about the Count, and she's like, the Count likes you. Like, I really know the Count likes you, and he doesn't love me anymore. And Susanna's like, I mean, yeah, but it's not like that. Like, he's trying to pay me for sex. He doesn't like want to hang out with me or talk to me or anything. And the Countess is still like, I don't like this. And Susanna is like, I'm trying to marry Figaro, and he's like keeping it from happening. And then Figaro comes in, and he's talking about this plan that he has to keep Count Almaviva away from Susanna until they're able to get married. And he's like, I'm going to write an anonymous letter, and I'm going to give it to Don Basilio to give to the Count, that says that you, the Countess, are out rendezvousing with someone else, and that you're in fact going to cheat on him. And we'll get him this letter, and then he'll be too distracted trying to find out what you're doing to interrupt our wedding. And at various points you hear them kind of say, so, oh, do you hear the music? The wedding is getting ready to start. So it's like they're trying to have this wedding all day, and it's just not happening. So they've come up with this little plan, Figaro and Susanna and the Countess, and their little plan is that they're going to get Cherubino and dress him up like a girl, and get him out with get the Countess, not the Countess, get the Count to meet with Cherubino, thinking that it's Susanna, and then revealing, I'm actually Cherubino and you're caught. And so that's their original plan. And so Figaro goes to deliver the letter. Cherubino comes in. Susanna and the Countess are, playfully dressing him up like a girl, which is, again, for that time was just like, that was kind of like, oh, like big deal kind of stuff. It's really funny and raunchy. And then also, so you have a woman that's playing this boy who's dressing up as a woman, pretending to be a woman. So they're just having a lot of fun with him. Susanna is teasing Cherubino about how much he likes the Countess, and the Countess she's kind of enjoying the attention. And you actually find out in the sequel to this that she ends up banging the page, but we're not getting into that right now. She doesn't in the Marriage of Figaro. And so they're just kind of playing with him, and Susanna leaves the room for some reason, probably to go get some kind of dress or something. And the Count starts to come in when they have the door locked, and the Count's trying to come in while the Countess is in there just with Cherubino, and he's all dressed up like a woman. And so they're like, this isn't going to be good if he finds you in here with me. Like, that's going to be a big problem. So she's like, they're scrambling and they're trying to hide him somewhere and get in here and get in here. And the Count's like banging her. He's like, who are you talking to? And she's like, you, of course. Like, who else would I be talking to? And of course, like, they're singing everything in Italian. And finally they get Cherubino hidden in the closet, and then she lets the Count in, and he's like, what's going on? And she's like, nothing. And he's like, oh, but you're all so worked up right now. And she's like, huh, no, I'm not. Like, you're silly. And he's like, who's all in the closet? And she's like, it's Susanna, she's trying on her wedding dress. And so they go back and forth for a while where she's pleading him not to open the closet, and it's locked. And he goes, okay, well, I'm gonna go get a key. Or no. Susanna comes in before they leave. While this is going on, Susanna comes back in the room, but they don't see her. And she notices what's going on. She figures it out pretty quick. So she's trying to hide. And then when the Count leaves, he's like, I'm going to go get a key, get something to open this up with, and you're going to come with me. And he locks the door so that no one can leave. And because it's like one of those locks, like you have to have a key for both sides to unlock it, so that no one can get out and mess around and fuck around with him. And so Susanna leaves out, and she gets Cherubino, and she's like, the Count's coming back in, like, you got to get the fuck out of here. And so he ends up jumping out the window while Susanna goes into the closet. And so as they're coming back into the room, the Countess and the Count, now the Countess has no idea that Susanna has switched places with Cherubino and that Cherubino has made it out of the room. So she's like, oh, I guess I'll have to give in. And she tells the Count, she's like, I'm sorry, it's the page, it was nothing, we were just doing whatever. And so the Count's really mad, and he opens it up, and of course it's Susanna. And the Countess is like, the fuck? Like, how did this happen here? And the Count's like, the fuck? What's going on? She's like, oh, I was just messing with you. I was just teasing you, telling you it was the page since you doubted me. How could you doubt me, silly? And then Figaro comes in, and I don't know what he's trying to do. I think he's trying to get Susanna for the wedding so they can finally do this fucking wedding. And then Antonio, here we have another character, the gardener, comes in, and he's actually Barbarina's father, Antonio the gardener. So he comes into the room, and he's all mad because he just saw someone leap from this window into his carnations. They fucked up his carnations, and he doesn't like that. And so, Figaro doesn't quite know what's going on yet. So Susanna and the Countess are trying to kind of like sneakily tell him what's happening by giving him little signals about what to say behind the Count's back. And so he kind of figures it out, and he says he was the one that jumped from the window. And he's like, oh, look, I even have a sprain in my ankle, and starts like faking a limp. And they're like saying, like, look at this guy, he's drunk, he doesn't know what he's talking about, like, don't listen to him. And the Count is just kind of like, I don't know if I believe you guys, but all of you are kind of like on this shit. So he kind of just lets it go for the moment. And then Marcelina and Dr. Bartilow come in, and they're there to be like, hey, we're gonna start this marriage with Figaro because he hasn't paid me my money, and so we're getting married. And the Count is like, oh, I fucking love this. Like, hell yeah. Like, let's do that shit. Let's make that happen. Guess we're gonna have to go to court to find out before we can do the wedding. And so that ends Act 2. And Act 3 opens up with the Count by himself, and he's just kind of replaying the events that happened in the bedroom, the Countess's bedroom in Act 2. And it's just, he knows that something's up. He's like, this whole story just doesn't make sense. Something's not right here. And then he's also worried about Susanna telling people that he wants to bang her. He's like, has she told anyone my secret? And then the Countess, is urging Susanna to go up to the Count and be like, hey, I want to meet you tonight and bang you, because they're still planning on setting him up. Because now the Countess is just like distraught, and she wants to know for sure if he's actually going to go through with it. And she's like, please, Susanna, like, my peace of mind like relies on you. So she goes up to the Count and she's like, I need some smelling salts or something for the lady. She's not feeling very well. And by the way, I do want to have sex with you. And he's like, wait, for real? And she's like, totally. And he's like, what, this morning? Like, you were so cold and standoffish. And she's like, yeah, I was just playing hard to get, just like messing around with you. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, all right, well, this is exciting. I'm excited about this. And she mentions, the money that he promised her. He's like, what? When did I promise you that money? She's like, remember? Because you want to do me? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll give you that money if you do me and if you're sincere about this. And then some people start coming in. And so they have to stop talking. And then Figaro is one of the people that comes in, and Count Almaviva is leaving on one side of the stage and they're getting ready to head out on the other. And she goes up to him and she goes, I've just won your case without a lawyer. And then they run off. And then the Count goes, I've won your case. Because he like just barely heard it. And he's like, they're fucking up to something. And I don't like this. I don't know what's going on, but they're trying to get one on me, and that's not going to happen. So then it goes to the court scene where, and again, this is all happening in one day. And Figaro is sitting there with Marcelina, Bartolo. You have Don Curzio, who's the judge. The Count is there. And Don Curzio, the judge, has decided you marry her, pay her. And Figaro's like, no, fucking come on, please. And the Count's like, oh, what a just and fair ruling. And Marcelina's like, yes, what a lovely ruling. And Dr. Bartolo's like, oh, this is great, because now Figaro is screwed. And so Figaro's like, I'm not going to do it. And Don Curzio's like, she lent you $2,000, man, or 2,000 pieces of silver or whatever. Whatever the currency was then. She's like, she lent you all this money. Like, you gotta like do something, and you have to marry her. And he goes, well, actually, hold on a second. Now that you mention it, marriage, I actually need permission from my parents to get married, because I'm really of noble birth. And the Count's like, what? No, you are not. You fucking liar. Everyone's like, no, you're not. Prove it. He's like, yeah, I was stolen as a baby. They found all these gold and jewels and everything on me. It's like, I even have this birthmark on my arm. And Marcelina goes, a spatula on your right arm? And Figaro's like, who told you that? And she goes, oh my God, it's you. And Figaro's like, yeah, it's me. Who? And Marcelina and Bartolo look at each other and they're like, it's Raffaello. So apparently a long time ago, Marcelina and Bartolo got freaky with each other. They had a baby, they got kidnapped, or they had to give away or whatever, because Bartolo wouldn't marry her like I guess he was supposed to at that time. And they're like, it's you. And then the Count's like, what's going on? And Don Curzio's like, he can't marry this woman, it's his mother. They're like, his mother? That's his mother? And then Marcelina goes over to Bartolo. She's like, and this is your father. And they're like, holy shit. So she's like, come here and hug me. Recognize your mother by this embrace. And so she's hugging Figaro. And then Bartolo comes in and he's getting some hugs going. And they're all like, singing for a very long time about the fact that this is his mother and his father. And it's just like, su madre, tua padre, like just on and on and on and on. And then Susanna comes in and she has some money. She's ready to pay off Figaro's debt so that she can finally marry him and he won't have to marry Marcelina. So as she comes in, Figaro is hugging Marcelina because he's just found out this is his long lost mother that was about to marry him. Um, and oh gosh, it's good. So Susanna comes in and she sees him hugging Marcelina and she's like, oh, fuck no. What? Oh, you so happy with your new wife already? And he's like, listen to me. And she's like, listen to this, and smacks him. And he's like, no, this is my mother. And she's like, tua madre. He's like, mi madre. And then they carry on the song and they sing for a long time. And then you think it's going to end. And Figaro's like, mi padre. And you're like, okay, yes, they've established now. Like they're good. Everyone's on the same page. Like we're set to move along. And then you get more, mi madre, mi padre, tua padre. And it just keeps going. That's the thing with operas sometimes. I feel like the songs are just sometimes a little too long and I'm ready to get to the next scene. But you just can't, like, with opera, you just can't be expecting the action to move along quickly. It's like you figure out what's going on and then you appreciate the music because they're going to repeat the things a few times. But it's very lovely music, very lovely songs, and very talented people. The one that I watched that I'm talking about, the Glyndebourne one from 1994, I started looking up some of the people that were in it and they're all like super popular in the opera world, which I just don't really know about, but they're all extremely talented, have the most beautiful voices. And so then act 3, we're still in act 3, Figaro finds out, he doesn't have to marry Marcelina, and in fact, as a wedding present, she's going to, forgive his debt. And of course, it's her son. They're all happy, like she's not going to charge him now. And they're in fact all so happy that Bartilow says that he's going to marry Marcelina, as he should have done such a long time ago. And they end up having a double wedding. And but before they have the wedding, they're like preparing for it and everything. And the count is back with the countess. No, not the count. Excuse me. Susanna is back with the countess, and they're still trying to figure out how they're going to scheme on the count later. And she's like, oh, I'll write him. No, the countess says, write him a letter. Tell him to meet you underneath the pines. Tell him that there's a gentle breeze sighing beneath the pines this evening, and says some suggestive things. And it's like, he'll figure out the rest. And so she's like, here, seal it with this pin and tell him to return the pin to you so that, he knows that it's fucking on. And then the countess is going to dress up as Susanna this time. So they were going to get Cherubino to, he's supposed to be gone in the military. He's supposed to have already left, but all these people are trying to keep him around. Everyone except for the count basically is trying to keep him around for their own little purposes or whatever. So he's just kind of been hiding throughout the day and trying to not let it be revealed that he hasn't left to Seville like he's supposed to. So she's going to give the note to, Susanna is going to make sure the note gets to the count. And then as they're together, all these women come in, Barbarina and all the other little younger peasants of the castle, I guess, and they're bringing flowers to the countess just to honor her. And Barbarina, who likes Cherubino, obviously, she has now dressed him up as a woman and is trying to hide him among all of this group of girls. Because he's like, the count is, if he catches me, he's going to be so mad. He's going to send me away. And she's like, it's fine. Just pretend to be one of us. So as they're in there giving all these flowers to the countess notices him. And she's like, Susanna, does this little girl remind you of anyone? And they're just kind of like playfully laughing about it. And then Antonio, the gardener, comes in and he's figured out that the page, Cherubino, is dressing up in lady clothes and is trying to hide and has the count following behind him. And he looks at the countess like, the fuck? And she's like, oh, I'm just as surprised and upset as you are. And it's trying to play it off, and he's getting like really upset at Cherubino and is getting ready to do something to him in a rage. And Barbarina steps in the middle and she goes, but wait, remember all those times you came to me to kiss and cuddle me? You said you'd give me whatever I want. And he's all like, what? Because everyone can hear, including the Countess. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She's like, yeah, you fucking said it. So let me marry Cherubino and don't send him away. And he pretty much doesn't have a choice at this point. So then everyone goes to leave and the wedding is finally going to happen. And the Countess is like, come on, we have to go receive the bride and the groom. And you love the bride so much. So let's go, you man slut. And so they go and then they have the wedding. And that's when Susanna gets the note to the Count with the pin. And Figaro is watching this as they're dancing and sees the Count like, look at the note, and he's like reading it all like, even pricks himself with the pin. And Figaro's laughing, not knowing what's going on with this note because he's not in on this part of the plan. Like they're married, so he thinks like everything's set and everything's good to go. He doesn't know that Susanna is doing this for the Countess. And since the Countess is going to show up in Susanna's clothes and Susanna doesn't even need to be involved, then she's like, don't worry about Figaro, like everything is fine. I'm going, you're not going. So Figaro knows that there's something up and he's feeling delighted. He thinks he finally got one over on the Count. He got what he wanted. The Count didn't get what he wanted. 1 for the peasants, 0 for the aristocrats. So at the time that this play came out, or this opera came out, which was a few years before the French Revolution, it was a really big deal to have peasants kind of overthrowing their rulers. Like stuff like that just didn't happen. So this was like a big fucking deal that little Figaro got one over on his lord. The rich people don't like that. So Act 4 is all outside in these pines in this forest. And Barbarina is out there by herself and she's sad that she's lost this pin that she's supposed to give back to Susanna. And Figaro and his mother, Marcelina, are coming up behind her and she's like, what's wrong? And she's like, I lost this pin and there's this thing and I need to give it back to Susanna. Oh, Figaro. Hey, but she doesn't really know what's going on either. She just knows that the Count told her not to tell anyone. And now Figaro knows. She's like, oh, but you're not going to tell anyone, right? And he's like, a pin to give back to Susanna? Holy shit. So that note was from Susanna. Here I am thinking she's this good and faithful wife. And she went through all of this to marry her. And she's still going to slut around with the Count after all this. So he's pissed. So he tells his mom, like, fuck this shit. Fuck Susanna. I'm going to go avenge husbands everywhere. And his mom's like, calm down. Like, you don't know, like, who's playing who. Everyone's been scheming around all day. You don't know what's going on. And he's like, no, this is happening for sure. And so Marcelina's like, she starts singing to herself as Figaro leaves. And she's kind of like, I don't think that Susanna did anything. So I'm going to go, let her know. And you know what, even if she is, we women have to protect each other the way that we bend over backwards for these men. I got to look out for her. So she goes. And then Susanna and the Countess come in and they're preparing to, dupe the Count. And so now the Countess is wearing Susanna's wedding dress and her veil. And Susanna is wearing the Countess's clothes and is kind of covered up. And so now she knows that Figaro thinks that she actually is getting with the Count. So she's upset because she's like, I wouldn't actually do that. After everything that I went through today to make sure that I could marry him, why would he think that I'm going to do this? All right, well, I'll teach him a lesson. And so they know that Figaro is like listening and watching. So Susanna starts singing this song for like the Countess. So she's kind of hiding as the Countess is like, just strolling around. About how excited she is to meet the Count. And so Figaro's pissed. And then someone is coming somewhere, so they have to run off. It's just this whole opera is just people always getting interrupted and someone walking in on them doing something. So Figaro goes to get all these people together and he's like, we're going to expose the Count. I'm going to show everyone what a scoundrel he is. And then he starts singing like this long song. It's called Open Your Eyes. And he's like, guys, open your eyes. Don't you see these women? Look at these women. Look at how they are. You see what they're like. They're liars. They're cheaters. They're troublemakers. They're smiling bears. They're dangerous vixens, sirens from the sea. They're comets that shine only to distract us. They feel no love. They feel no pity. I mean, just a man scorned totally. And he's just like hating on all women. Everyone's like, you know what these women are like. You know, they're all like this. The whores. No, he didn't say that part, but that's basically what he's saying. And so he's just really upset and just, hey, Rosie, get down. She wants a snack. And so he's just like really upset and just isn't really thinking straight. And so then the Count shows up finally and is trying to get with Susanna. And so Susanna goes off with him, or not Susanna, but the Countess actually goes off with him as Susanna. And he, like, they're getting ready to hide because someone's coming. So like we have to hide, before they could get down with it. And so, the Countess is like, oh, but it's so dark in there. And he's like, well, we're not going in there to read a book, if you know what I mean. So let's just go. And so they go hide. And then I think Susanna is the one that comes out, and like Figaro's there, and he thinks that Susanna is the Countess at this point. He's like, can't you see what's going on? We have to go catch these people. Your husband is trying to bang my wife, and my wife is happily going to take it. What a good, obliging wife she is. And then he recognizes by the voice that it's Susanna and not the Countess. So then he starts to realize what's going on. So now he's like, oh, Susanna wasn't actually trying to do anything. She was trying to trick me. Well, now I'll try to trick her for trying to trick me. And he pretends that he actually still thinks it's the Countess. And now he's going to come on to the Countess. And he's all like, hey, girl, like, our partners are cheating on us. So why don't we turn this pain into pleasure and get with each other? And Susanna's like, you fucking asshole. Like, it's me. Like, what? Why would you do this? Like, we set this whole thing up. And after all this, you're still trying to get with the Countess? And he's like, she starts hitting him again. She's hitting him. And he's like, oh, yes, hit me more. I love it. It's just enjoying that he's, got her kind of roused up from him playing this trick on her. But then she gets really upset and starts crying. He's like, oh, no, I recognize your voice, this lovely voice that just makes my heart skip a beat. And you're just so amazing. Like, how could I not know that it was you? And so now they're getting ready to like expose the Count. The Count has like come back out, and the Count has emerged. I think he's trying to find out if he can be alone again with who he thinks is Susanna, and he sees Figaro coming on to the Countess Susanna pretending to be the Countess, because they notice that the Count is coming, and they're like, oh, let's fuck with him now and keep coming on to me, and he'll get mad and think that you're coming on to the Countess. And so he comes over there and he's getting all mad, and like he pulls these people out from like somewhere. I don't know if they go to run away, but he's like pulling them out from like behind trees or something. And Carabino comes out, and then Barbarina and the Countess or Susanna, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? They're like, oh, please forgive us, Count, please forgive us. And he's like, no, I'm not going to forgive any of you. And then like everyone's there, everyone that had been in the opera, they're like, forgive us. And he's like, no, I never could. I hate all of you. Fuck all you guys. And then the Countess comes out, revealing herself to be dressed in Susanna's wedding clothes. And she's like, well, could you at least forgive them for my sake? And now the Count is like, shit. That was my wife the whole time, not Susanna. So now my wife knows everything that I thought I was saying to Susanna. And now everyone here knows I was trying to bang Susanna and trying to cheat on my wife. And so now he's like asking the Countess for forgiveness. And she goes, well, because I'm a lot nicer than you. I'll forgive you like you wouldn't do for all these people. And then everyone's happy and they are singing a song and they get ready to have another celebration, a big party, and everyone's all in love with each other again and everything's fine. That's how the play ends. And that's the Marriage of Figaro. And it's awesome. Like I said, you can find it on YouTube, all these different productions. It's about 3 hours long, any production. Some of them leave certain songs out or take parts out. But you're looking at 3 hours. So you need to devote some time to it if you're going to watch it, even though it is just so much fun. But it's in 4 acts, so you could split it up too. If you want to just watch it act by act. I mean, even if you go to see an opera, there's an intermission in the middle because you need a break. Yeah, it's really good. Read about Beaumarchais. You will not be disappointed. This guy is nuts. Someone needs to make a movie about him, seriously. But there you go. That's going to do it for today, friends. Thanks for coming to my opera. And yeah, till next time. Bye, friends.